Hello viewers, thank you for joining me. There are a few places I could start with the background on this one. It's been kind of a low-key goal this year for me to finally get to some of the shows that have been sitting on my to-watch list forever. Monster has been on that list for a while now. It's the kind of anime I've heard people talk about in a hidden gem sort of way. It doesn't come up much, but whenever I do hear someone talk about it, it's always been in a really good light. All that's really kept me away from it is that it's so much longer than almost anything else on that list. 74 episodes in total. But I'm watching it now as a request from Car1956, who suggested it in response to some of the things I'd found disappointing about Death Note, namely that Light and his views were so extreme that I felt it detracted from any conversation about morality the anime was trying to have. Monster definitely takes a subtler approach, so I'm looking forward to getting into that. But I do have to say again that it's a very long show, compared to the more standard 12 or 13 episodes these days, and because 74 episodes is way too long to try and cram into a single review, I'll be doing this one in two parts. Part 1 will cover episodes 1 through 39, and you can expect spoilers for this first half of the series. Our story begins in Germany in 1986 and follows Dr. Kenzo Tenma, a young but talented Japanese neurosurgeon. He's in a really good position at the start of the story, respected for his surgical skills and engaged to the hospital director's daughter. He's already on the path to being set for life, but those morality questions pop up right away, as it's made clear almost immediately that no one else seems to care as genuinely for their patients as Tenma does. Doing well in a major hospital like this one is all about sucking up to the right people, and the other doctors tend to prioritize their own success over anything else. There are varying levels to this. Like, it was despicable to me personally to learn that Tenma wrote most of the academic papers the hospital directors presented as his own these past few years. But Tenma himself didn't really mind, and the better the director's reputation is, the more funding the hospital brings in. So whatever, that sort of thing can be overlooked. But the tale of Monster truly begins with Tenma being confronted by the wife of a simple construction worker who's just died because he couldn't get into surgery in time. The issue is, he was brought in before the patient Tenma had just finished operating on and should have been treated first. But Tenma had been pulled out of that surgery at the last minute. What he comes to find out is that the patient he saved was a famous opera singer, and the director chose to prioritize a celebrity's well-being over that of an everyday person's, knowing it would be good publicity for the hospital. Tenma doesn't even care that the director takes the credit for the successful surgery, but he can't abide by the decision to value one person's life more highly, just because that person has money and influence. This leads to tensions with just about everyone around him. The director looks down on him for being young and naive. The other doctors are bitter that their rising star doesn't seem to appreciate how good he has it, and his fiancée is just an extremely selfish and superficial person he'd be better off without anyway, to be honest. But she makes it clear that there won't be a future for the two of them if his conscience is going to jeopardize his success. So Tenma is miserable, and it doesn't take long for it all to come to a head. A foreign trade advisor who'd recently fled to this side of the country to escape political tensions is found murdered alongside his wife, and their twin children are rushed to the hospital. The girl is unharmed, albeit too traumatized to speak, but the boy's been shot in the head and will die soon without the intervention of a skilled surgeon. Just as Tenma's about to begin, he's interrupted again, told that the mayor, who's always donated generously to this hospital, has just been brought in for emergency surgery, and the director wants Tenma in that operation instead, but Tenma's not willing to make the same mistake twice. He leaves that surgery to the other doctors, and gets to work on his own patient. Young Johann comes out of surgery expected to make a full recovery. The mayor doesn't make it, and nothing could have prepared Tenma for the fallout. In no time at all, he's lost all respect and any hope of promotion, been dumped by his fiancée, and they even take him off the twins' case when it becomes apparent how much their recovery means to him. He's really clinging to that as proof he's done something good, and one afternoon finds him venting to a supposedly still comatose Johann that he knows he did the right thing, and it's people like them who actually deserve to die. But then the hospital director and all the doctors in his inner circle are found murdered. The twins have disappeared, but no one's really looking for them with the murder case going on. This case introduces Tenma to Detective Leung, who proudly informs him that no case he's been a part of has ever been left unsolved, and unfortunately for Tenma, he's the only one who really stands to gain from all these deaths. Sure enough, he's soon appointed as the new head of the surgical department. There isn't enough evidence to arrest him, though, and he tries to put the twins out of his mind as the hospital flourishes for the next peaceful decade. When the story picks back up in 1995, Johann and Anna Lieber are a distant memory. Detective Leung hasn't forgotten the hospital murders completely, but he's moved on to another case. In the past 5 years, there have been 5 incidents of childless, middle-aged couples turning up murdered, but police have been struggling to connect the deaths. Tenma ends up saving a thief associated with one of the crimes, but when the man is conscious again, he's traumatized in a way very reminiscent of Anna Lieber all those years ago. All he'll say is that a monster is coming for him. And finally, when this man flees the hospital, Tenma follows him, and there, in the abandoned construction site, he learns that the monster the thief was running from was a grown-up Johann, who's turned into a full-fledged serial killer since Tenma saved him 10 years earlier. No amount of pleading can save the thief, who Johann shoots with a smile and exactly 0 remorse. He spares Tenma, who's too shocked to follow him, telling him he sees the doctor almost like a father, for giving him life when that bullet should have killed him. So Johann Lieber disappears into the night, and Dr. Tenma is left to try and comprehend the consequences of his good deed. When suspicion for this murder falls on him as well, he becomes a fugitive, deciding the only way to make up for his role in all this is to kill Johann himself. Which finally brings us to the real story. I knew this opening exposition bit would be on the long side, but I didn't think it would be quite this long. And this actually only brings us to about episode 5. But Monster isn't the kind of show that's stuffed full with a million things happening every single episode. Once the story's properly introduced, it really slows down. And to be totally honest, that hasn't been something I've loved about it so far. The premise of this story drew me in the very first time I heard about it, and you'd think the tale of a doctor tracking down an ex-patient turned serial killer whose crimes he's being framed for would be fast-paced and thrilling, right? Tenma does immediately start going back through the crimes, trying to piece together Johann's life since he disappeared from the hospital, and every once in a while he'll stumble across something really interesting that'll direct where he goes next. But it's a lot of meandering through one small German country town after another, getting involved in the villagers' lives there in some way, and then moving on to another mini-adventure in the next town. It feels almost rude to complain about this, coming off the little arc I finished leading up to this review. When Monster focuses in and gets good, it gets really good, but it's hard to forget how hard it was to get through at times. You want to be excited to return to a series each time you have to take a break from it, and I just wasn't a lot of the time. Given how many shows I watch that end up feeling rushed, I generally appreciate a series that has that luxury of telling its story in its own time. The build-up to the good parts just feels a little excessive here. Kind of a dreary way to start, so other than just the general premise, let's talk about what I'm enjoying so far. One of the things I didn't know about Monster beforehand was how important its setting is. The historical significance of the show taking place in Germany during the years directly before and after the Berlin Wall was torn down can be found all over the place. You see it in the characters' views and motivations. The political tensions in Germany once it was reunified come up again and again. The fact that Tenma doesn't really have any stake in all that also served as another reminder at times that he's a foreigner here, and has an extremely limited number of people he can rely on. History actually was one of my better subjects growing up, but I have to admit that my interest was focused mostly on the World Wars, and then Vietnam. I mostly skipped over the Cold War and its after effects. This anime has made me interested to go back and brush up on it though, if only for a little more context. And of course, the characters were a high point too. Tenma is immediately likable, and there's been nothing I've found truly off-putting about him so far, even now that he's caught up in his guilt-induced murder mission. He's definitely in a dark place, but he hasn't lost any of the qualities that made him stand out as such a good guy in the first place. Here at this midway point, he's finally starting to have some powerful allies. Early on, Monster could be frustrating to watch because it's the type of show where seemingly nothing ever goes right. And I don't mean frustrating because I felt the writing was flawed. You just want things to work out for Tenma, and anytime he gets someone he starts to feel he can rely on, it's almost inevitable they're going to die in some awful way that just ends up making him look even more suspicious. Tenma comes to learn that Johann was moving from one unofficial foster family to the next. He could be incredibly charming, and there were apparently quite a few childless couples out there willing to take in such a poor orphan as himself. After a while, but before it could become common knowledge that a child was staying with them, Johann would kill the couple and move on. But he's been moving on alone for a while now. Tenma finds his sister with what was likely the first family they stayed with, going by the name Nina Fortner now, and having suppressed all her memories of her time as Anna. But that doesn't last long. Johann had always planned to come back for her. She's just lucky Tenma found her first. Her adoptive parents were not so lucky, and Nina remembers everything when the two find the Fortners' bodies, including that she was the one to shoot Johann after the Lieberts were murdered. Unfortunately, she slips away not long after they manage to evade the police, again, with precisely the same plan Tenma has. She feels responsible for not taking out her brother properly the first time, and decides the only way to atone is to be the one to kill him now. They are equally passionate about being the one to pull the trigger, specifically so they can save the other from becoming a murderer. My hope for the second half of the series is to see them team up. Not only have neither of them been able to actually pull that trigger, they're kind of getting in each other's way, and as things stand right now, I do want one of them to succeed. But I get the feeling this anime is going to do its best to change my mind, which brings us to the most interesting character by a long shot, Johann himself. 39 episodes in, and I've only just gotten to a point where I'm even seeing Johann firsthand. For most of the story so far, he's been more like a phantom. Tenma or Nina will run into past associates who all love to stress how inhumanly evil Johann is, usually shortly before that association with him gets them killed too. But as Tenma gets closer, he learns that the Lieberts weren't actually their biological parents either. The twins were found by the Czechoslovakian border, running from something. They were initially split up, with Nina sent to a fairly pleasant orphanage, and Johann ending up in a nightmare facility, trying to condition them into being emotionless child soldiers. But an old worker stresses the same things we've already heard, that there was just something inherently evil about Johann from the start, and that's why they focus so much on him. Johann was at the heart of the revolution that got this particular orphanage shut down, and a lot of its inhabitants killed, which has left him with a legacy amongst some of the survivors, particularly the few remaining adults. Johann's character is one big nature versus nurture debate. Was there always something dark inside him, or is his current self the result of his childhood traumas? I think all people are a result of some ingrained personality and some life experiences shaping that personality. But generally, I'm more inclined to side with the abused orphan with no one else to turn to than the adults practicing psychological torture on children. But maybe in this case, that's just the proof Johann started to fool me a bit too. Nina and Tenma finally catch up with him in Munich, where Johann's been pretending to be a student at the university. His focus has been on a wealthy but bitter old man who started hiring students to read to him in Latin since his eyesight started to go. But Hans Schuwald isn't actually a bad guy. He's had all the success and wealth anyone could ask for, but he's lonely and regrets quite a bit about his life. He's aware of an illegitimate son he had with a prostitute and has been searching for some way to atone for not being there for them. By the time we catch up to Johann in Munich, he's been coaching another student through convincing Schuwald that he's his long-lost son, but that student, supposedly, commits suicide when the real long-lost son appears. Johann moves on to Karl, who only wanted to see what kind of person Schuwald is, and persuades him into taking that role as Schuwald's son. Johann himself becomes the trusted personal secretary. Johann and his associates lock everybody in and set fire to a library where Schuwald's being honored at a book donation ceremony, which is pretty par for the course. Nina and Tenma had both deduced he'd been planning something big for this day, and once the ceremony dissolves into chaos, Schuwald himself tells Johann that he'd suspected the boy was after his wealth. But then comes the interesting part, because Johann tells Schuwald that, actually, that's not the plan anymore. He seems content to stand back and just watch the disaster unfold before them. Which begs the question, what does Johann really want? Because I have to say, I'm 40 episodes in and still have no idea what's really going on in his head. He kills without a second thought and no guilt, but not for fun. I don't get the impression that killing brings him any real enjoyment. How important are these plans? Because he showed no inclination to fight back when Nina and Tenma came at him with their guns drawn during the fire. I'm pretty sure Johann is one mystery that won't be solved until the very end. Tenma's been floating the theory that he could have multiple personalities, but I'm not so sure about that. We are handed what feels like the greatest clue shortly before this halfway stopping point. Johann comes across a children's book in the library and has some sort of mental break. It doesn't take long for him to recover, but after his collapse, another concerned student, who's deduced the two must be twins, brings the book to Nina. Nina knows its importance somehow, but she can't quite recall the memory. The book is titled A Nameless Monster. It's a fairy tale of sorts, chronicling a monster who wants to find a name, which seems to be symbolic for being acknowledged and accepted by others. At the start of his journey, the monster splits in two, and the two halves take off in different directions to find a name. The original goes through a village, taking up residence in each of the villagers' bodies in exchange for sharing his strength, and for a while all will be well. The monster will get to live as the villager and be happy, but eventually he'll grow hungry and eat the person from the inside out, then move on to the next person, until finally he meets the land's prince, who's very sick. He jumps into the prince's body, restoring his health, and in turn getting to claim his name. But he gets so attached to Prince Johann's name that he doesn't want to leave. He resists his hunger until he ends up eating all the people around the prince instead of the prince himself. So he gets to keep his name, but he's lost all the things that made it special. The monster now known as Johann leaves the castle and reunites with his other half, only to find him still nameless. Rather than find a name, this monster instead found a way to love and accept himself without one. I really loved the episode that told this story. I'm a big fan of dark fairy tales. It also mimics the twins' lives so clearly, yet not perfectly. Nina's the one who found a name, for one, yet she's also the one with the healthier mindset, and she didn't have to kill anyone to get it. It was literally just introduced, so it may be too soon to properly analyze how it relates to Nina and Johann, and what exactly it means for them, but I'm really looking forward to getting a better picture of it. They all end up escaping the fire and going their separate ways again. Tenma learns that the twins' biological mother is still alive and living in Prague, and I left off the story right as he sets his new course to go find her. Monster only has one season. It's not really meant to be stopped in the middle like I did. Because of that, there are a lot of things about this anime that it's just too early to make a decision on. The morality discussion that arises from this show could be really interesting, depending on what gets introduced later. I think Tenma's side of it is pretty simple. He may feel responsible himself, but not being able to see the future isn't a morality thing. Without the prior knowledge that one of those patients was going to go on and murder a bunch of people, he wasn't wrong for treating their lives as equally important. Johann's a little more complicated. I don't think anything they reveal can possibly excuse what he's done, but it could definitely complicate my feelings about who he's turned out to be. I'll say that much. What's really interesting to me is how the anime itself has chosen to present Johann. He's really kept at a distance from the viewer at first, depicted as the human incarnation of pure evil, but as soon as we're allowed to take that step closer, they start to show him in a more sympathetic light. I can't read him properly yet, but I know that's because I'm not meant to really understand him yet. I go into every new show hoping I'll love it. I really love where Monster's at right now. The twins' story has really sucked me in, and I'm excited to meet their mother and get a clearer picture of how it all started. I just hope I don't have to sit through another 20 episodes of road trip across the border to get there. Like I said, I've heard almost nothing but praise for this anime, so I'm looking forward to getting a great payoff once I reach the end. Thank you for watching.